Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, released an advisory on loneliness and isolation on Tuesday, following the COVID-19 pandemic that caused social distancing and reduced contact. He said that loneliness and isolation can have destructive impacts on our health and well-being, and that they are more common than smoking, diabetes, and obesity. He urged Americans to find the healing power of relationships and to commit to our communities, families, schools, workplaces, and healthcare systems. He said that strengthening the social fabric of our nation is essential to improve our health and well-being. Calvin Barr, a Republican state senator from Minnesota, voted shirtless and lying in bed during a Zoom meeting with the Legislative Audit Commission on Monday. He used a Schoolhouse Rock character as a backdrop and turned off the camera after voting. His vote became a viral sensation on social media, with memes, jokes, and comments. His GOP Senate spokeswoman said he worked until 4:45 a.m. and went to bed before the meeting. He did not comment on the vote or the video. Italy, a member of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a massive infrastructure and investment plan by China, is having second thoughts about its decision. The country faces a deadline to end the deal by 2023, after its new Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, froze the agreement and screened Chinese investments in 2021. Italy's choice is also influenced by its relationship with Taiwan, a self-ruled island that China claims as its own. Italy has expressed its support for democracy and human rights in Taiwan, which has angered China. Italy's dilemma reflects the divisions and dilemmas of the European Union, EU, which has to balance its economic interests with its security concerns and its relations with China. Uganda's parliament passed one of the world's strictest anti-LGBTQ bills mostly unchanged, including long jail terms and the death penalty, after President Yoweri Museveni requested some parts of the original legislation be toned down. The provisions retained in the new bill include the death penalty for so-called aggravated homosexuality and a 20-year sentence for promoting homosexuality, which activists say could criminalize any advocacy for the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer citizens. The legislation now heads back to Museveni, who can sign it, veto it, or return it again to Parliament. The White House is trying to persuade Congress to pass a 30% tax on the electricity used in cryptocurrency mining in the next federal budget in order to minimize the nascent industry's impact on climate change. The proposed tax would be phased in over 3 years, starting at 10% next year, then rising to 20% and finally 30%. The tax would generate an estimated $3.5 billion over 10 years. The primary goal of the DAME tax is to start having crypto miners pay their fair share of the costs imposed on local communities and the environment. Cryptomining firms do not have to pay for the full cost they impose on others, in the form of local environmental pollution, higher energy prices, and the impacts of increased greenhouse gas emissions on the climate. Morgan Stanley is preparing for a new round of layoffs. The bank is expected to cut about 3,000 jobs worldwide by the end of the quarter, or about 5% of its workforce, excluding financial advisors and their support personnel. The banking and trading group is expected to take the brunt of the layoffs. This would be the second significant round of layoffs at Morgan Stanley in 6 months. In December, it cut about 2% of its workforce, or 1,600 jobs. Last year, CEO James Gorman said the company was trying to improve efficiencies. In its quarterly earnings report last month, Morgan Stanley said its profit fell 19%, though it still beat analysts' expectations. Vice, a digital media company that produces and distributes news, documentaries, and podcasts, is preparing to file for bankruptcy in the coming weeks, according to the New York Times. The company has been struggling to find a buyer and has made cost-saving moves, such as closing its Vice World News division and laying off staff. If Vice goes into bankruptcy, it would continue to operate while an auction would take place over the next 45 days. The largest and most senior debt holder, Fortress Investment Group, would be paid first, or they could buy the company themselves. Vice has received investments from Disney and Fox in the past, but they would not get anything if Vice is sold. Vice is known for investigating and covering worldwide stories that American mainstream media outlets were not willing to cover. Hundreds of LGBTQ advocates and parents of transgender kids have packed the Texas Capitol ahead of the House's expected consequential vote on a bill that would ban gender-affirming care for children. Senate Bill 14 would prohibit trans youth from getting puberty blockers and hormone therapy, care that medical groups say is vital to their mental health. The bill is a legislative priority for the Texas Republican Party, whose platform opposes all efforts to validate transgender identity. The House's expected vote could represent a significant step in Texas toward joining over a dozen other states across the country in restricting transition-related care for trans youth. Alexander Huth, a neuroscientist at the University of Texas at Austin, and his colleague Jerry Tang, have developed an AI language decoder that can reconstruct entire thoughts from brain scans. They used functional MRI, fMRI, data from 3 patients who listened to podcasts and stories, and trained a model to map their brain activity with the words and sentences of the media. They were able to decode words, phrases, and even independent thoughts from the fMRI data, with an accuracy of more than 90%. The technology could offer a non-invasive way of translating thoughts into text, which could help millions of people with paralysis, locked-in syndrome, or brain injury. However, the technology also poses privacy and ethical concerns, as it could be used for mind-reading robots or fake news.
Thank you for watching. Please support our efforts by liking and sharing the videos. Don't forget to subscribe to get our regular updates.